another e-learning English presentation. Today we're going to be looking at writing an article. And the article is about an area of London called King's Cross, which is very near the centre. And it's famous for its two stations that you can see in the top left-hand picture. Okay, now King's Cross is an important area of London because it has experienced a lot of changes in recent history. Now, in the past, it had a reputation for crime and drugs, but all of that since changed in 2007 when Eurostar started travelling to Belgium and France. And this change has had a very positive impact in the area. Okay, so today for the article, we're going to be looking at the contents, the features, and the language. So let's get started. So here is the article itself. And as you can see, it's been split into 5 different parts, and we're going to be looking at these different areas in the presentation today. Okay. So an important thing to have in an article is firstly a catchy title. So this article is called King's Cross All Change. It's important to have a catchy title because you want to grab the attention of the reader straight away and hopefully get them interested to read the rest of your article. So King's Cross All Change is a good title because it has 2 meanings. Now, some people might read it and think that it's referring to the changes that have happened in the area, but it also has another meaning that people might think of. When you hear the phrase all change, that's usually said on a train when it reaches its final destination. So as you can see, it's an interesting, catchy title, and hopefully the readers will be interested to carry on reading. Okay. So moving on, another important feature of articles are subheadings. So here are 2 subheadings from the article itself. Now, subheadings are important for the structure of the article. So you usually have one main idea dedicated to each paragraph. And they're important because it helps the reader to follow what you're saying. It gives it a nice, clear structure. And I think the easier it is for the reader to read your article, the more interested they'll be and the more they'll carry on reading. So yes, subheadings are very important to have a nice, clear structure in your writing. And remember, one main idea per paragraph. Okay. Another important aspect of article writing is they usually have a lively and informal tone. So this basically means that it's quite chatty and it's quite conversational. If you just imagine it as if you are writing the article directly to the audience, so the person who is reading your article, you're speaking to them directly. So it's quite chatty and it engages the reader. So as you can see from the article, when they make reference to the connection with Harry Potter and King's Cross, they're talking about platform 9 3/4. The writer says, "Oh, and Harry Potter fans must of course have their picture taken at that platform. You know the one I mean." So as you can see, very informal, chatty, and it's more likely to keep your reader interested than if you adopted a far more formal tone. Okay, now just as important, I think it's really good to include quotations in your article. Okay, so people are usually very interested to hear what other people think and what they have to say, and it's a nice thing to include in your article. It can also serve in some cases as a review within the article itself. So if you have a look here, here are some of the quotations that appear. So what do you think of when I say King's Cross? I went out into the streets of London and asked people. Eurostar trains, said one. And the British Library, said another. While some remember its seedy past with its reputation for drugs and crime. So it's a much more interesting way to talk about what people think about King's Cross. So they mention Eurostar trains, the British Library, and some people remember its seedy past. So it's just a much more lively and vibrant way to do this. Okay, so moving on. Um, Another way to maintain this lively, chatty, informal tone is to use rhetorical questions. So here are two rhetorical questions from the article. So the first one, what do you think of when I say King's Cross? And what else is there to see and do in the area? I think one rhetorical question is probably enough, maximum two. And like I said, again, this is just another way in your article to engage your reader, and it's important to keep your reader interested as much as possible when they're reading. Try not to use too many, as I said, probably in an article this length, two maximum. Okay. Now, it's really good to use some interesting vocabulary to spice up your language a little bit, and create some nice images and pictures in the reader's mind. So if you have a look here, instead of saying restaurants, the writer said foodie hotspots. And instead of just using the adjective busy, they used the adjective vibrant. They also use the word fancy instead of expensive. So as you can see, they're using a variety of language to create some really, really, really nice images in the reader's mind. And a nice word that they also used when they were talking about the area is cobbled. So they mentioned cobbled streets. Now, if you don't know what cobbled means, have a look at the picture at the top. So it's a picture from the olden days of how the streets used to look. So we have the horse and cart. And if you look at the street itself, that is a cobbled street. Now, it's really nice that you use this word because it gives you a real sense of the history. And it also creates a nice contrast with the modern image of King's Cross that comes to mind with fancy flats and foodie hotspots. So it creates a good image in your mind and a really nice contrast with our modern times. Okay, so moving on. It's really important that you involve the reader when you're writing your article. As I said before, it's very important that you keep them engaged and interested so that they carry on reading. So in the article, the writer has a really strong finish. They say, I'm sure you'll agree that King's Cross is a fantastic part of London. So they involve the reader by using the word you. And also, please send in your reviews. I'd be very interested in reading them. So this is another example of involving the reader and getting them to participate directly with you. Okay. So just to summarize very briefly the different features and language that we've looked at. So the first thing you need to remember, you need to have a catchy title to immediately grab your reader's attention. It's very important to use quotations because that can add more interest again to your article. And number three, subheadings are important because it's important to have a clear structure and it needs to be easy to follow for the reader so that they'll keep on reading. Rhetorical questions are also very good for engaging your reader and maintaining a lively and chatty tone. Remember not to use too many. And it's also finally very important that you involve the reader as much as possible. And a strong finish is a nice way to finish your article as well. If you have a look at the picture at the bottom as well, you can see a photographer. So don't underestimate the use of images as well in your article to maintain the reader's attention. So here's a summary of all the language that we have used and had a look at in the presentation. Feel free, as usual, to hit the pause button, take a picture or write down any useful language that you think you'll need or will use in your writing in the future. And hopefully it will come in of use for you. Okay, so if you're interested in more practice with writing, if you're preparing for an exam, or just more practice for your job or your future life in English, please check out these two books, which will help you. And you can find out information about them on our website, elearningenglish.com.